Get my 6. Good evening. Welcome back for another episode of October Nights here on Homesteading Off the Grid. Guys, I won't be reading tonight's story from October Nights. I'm going to be telling you a different story, and here's why. Several reasons. We hadn't just taken a little trek up here as the sun was setting to look for our potential furry friends for a while, so we're going to do that this evening. Okay, we gotta keep that in there, especially since someone or something recently came by here just a few days ago and knocked more of my firewood piles over. Now, I came out today, and you can see behind me here, I restacked it. I took a bunch of it into the house to burn tonight. We've been burning for about a week now. The nights are getting chilly. It's one of the things I love about October. I've got my potential Bigfoot Sasquatch hunting companion with me there. You see her in the center of the screen at my 6 o'clock, which means directly behind me, Miss Cleopatra. She's been acting kind of skittish most of the afternoon, coming up here and staring into the woods for something that may or may not be there. So we're going to go up here and see what it is she may or may not be seeing, hearing, or smelling. Keep watching behind me. Watch for movement. Listen for odd sounds. Look at her. She was standing up on her hind legs. Girl, we're going to go up there and investigate and see what may or may not be up there. Okay, so I got a story for you, but it's not the one that appears in the book, October Nights. Available in print and Kindle from the link in the description box below. And I want to thank the literally thousands of you every month who have been buying those books. And I want to thank the hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of you that watch these videos every month and don't buy the books. You all matter to me, both audiences, okay? I appreciate you. You allow my family to live a life that it was a fantasy. I mean, when we were stuck in the Philippines, down and out, no money, no food, we used to fantasize about the way we're living now. And it's only possible because of each and every one of you watching these videos, buying the books. Thank you both, okay? The reason I'm not reading the story tonight is not because it's like a teaser thing to get those of you who haven't bought the book to go buy the book, but it's because there's a lot of politics in the story that's for tonight's date. That's not the theme. That's just kind of like one of the settings. The theme is pretty much that people are nuts. It doesn't, on both sides, all sides. And that's number one. And then number two, life happens to everybody. You know, good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. And there's several stories in the book, and there's more at later dates I'll be able to read to you because it's just not so chock full of politics. And it's not this author's views, the politics in this story dated for today's date. It's the views of the character, and both sides are equally represented, and both sides are equally portrayed as the nuts that many can often be. Not nuts for their viewpoints. Okay, you can see we're back here behind the campground now, getting ready to go into the woods. Not because of their views, I've never, it's because of lunatics based, whatever. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I've mentioned before that we intentionally keep this channel rated PG. We don't cuss and all that stuff. We intentionally also, our presence has been announced. We also intentionally avoid discussing politics, religion, these things that divide, okay? Because we don't want to alienate anybody, okay? And because I don't really care. I mean, I used to, but the amount of energy that I used to waste on, whatever. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Let's take a second and just listen. Tree knock. They know we're here, so get my 6. Look behind me. So, my son, he's 9 years old. I love him to death. I love him more than anything in this world. Him and his mother. And we had a great day today because his mother, if you follow my wife, my beautiful bride Dearly, aka Giggly Girl's channel, it's called Life with Dearly. You probably already know this. Her and Jenny Joe, our friend whose channel is called Jenny Joe, went up into Northern Virginia today. There's a big Asian store up there. It's like I've never been there, but it's kind of like a mall, and inside the mall there are all these various stores and markets of the various types. Like you go into one store and it's like Malaysian food, you go into one it's Filipino food, you go into one Indonesian, Japanese, Chinese, all this. They love going up there. My wife goes up there about maybe every 2 months because they've got a good supply. They stock up on Dearly and Jenny Joe and some of our other friends. They're able to stock up on Filipino food that they can't find anywhere else. So they'll go up there and spend several hundreds of dollars getting this stuff, and it lasts us for a considerable amount of time. So, those are birds. But it's odd because there's 6 of them. They're white-breasted nuthatchers, and they're like right there. I don't know if you can see them or not. But it's like they've come to tell me something. I don't know. So anyway, Dearly's up there today, Northern Virginia, getting all this stuff. And I like it too. I love the food. So that meant me and my son Daniel were home alone all day today, and man, what a great time we had. You know, he's 9, and I always tell myself every day he's going to be 9 years, 10 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days old today only. Tomorrow that opportunity's gone, so he'll be 9 years, 10 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days old. So I cherish every moment. So I said, what do you want to do today? And he said, I want to go bike riding. So I said, where? And he named the place he wanted to go. And it's a beautiful trail. It's in town. It goes up the river. And so we went in town. We did that. We biked for 4 miles, and then he was tired. And then I said, okay, what do you want to do? He says, you want to eat lunch? I said, yeah. He said, where? I said, where do you want to eat lunch? He says, I want to go to the Chinese buffet. So we did the Chinese buffet. Came home. Then I split and stacked some wood, hauled some wood in, mowed some grass. And, while he's kind of hanging out outside with me, and then his mom came home. Something threw something at us, and then there was a howl. And I knew tonight I was not going to read the story that's in the book October Nights because there's a lot of politics in it, and there's a lot of current issues we're facing, a lot of social social injustice stuff going on. Social issues is how I'll word it. And I'm like, I'm just not going to do that. And I thought, well, what story are you going to tell? And it just, a connection came. Hung out all day with my son, 9 years old. And I just remembered a time when I was 9 years old, and 2 of my buddies who were 9 years old, and something very strange had happened. And I thought, that would kind of be appropriate to tell this story. This is October. We are getting closer and closer with each passing night to Halloween. It is a ghost story. It's pretty creepy. Tell it. So I will. So There's something walking around back here behind me. I'm going to change my straight back. Keep your eyes open. And these white-breasted nuthatches are being very vocal for some reason. So this story almost made its way into October Nights, okay? But it didn't. There are several that were left out. And I've thought about maybe for next year writing October Nights too, but tree knock. After what I thought was a growl. Okay, so let's get into it. I didn't write this, so it's off kind of like winging it, but the story's there. Once upon a time, we'll say, a lot of activity tonight. That tree knock was much closer after we very much heard the mysterious creature screaming from the forest. Those footsteps were closer. Guys, there's nothing here. It's just me. But I think the message is get on with it. You've got us spoiled. We've been coming up here every night to hear these stories. Tell it. This is where the knocks and the footsteps are coming from. So once upon a time, let's say circa early 1980s, there were these three little boys. They were 9 years old. And let's say it was in Pennsylvania, Indiana, Idaho, wherever you want it to be. The location doesn't matter because the story's true. And it could have happened anywhere. These three little boys, like 9-year-old little boys do, they love to run around their neighborhood. They like to play tag. They like to play football in the street, you know. One of them had a basketball hoop, so of course they were always doing that too. But it was one October night, much like this October night, a night in which, just before dark, these little boys were playing hide and go seek. Right there. Watch. If you can't hear those footsteps, you're deaf. I've lost half my hearing and I can hear it right here. It could be old Red Eyes, and we're going to get to that one. I will be reading that one here in about, no. Guys, that's just like what happened at the campfire the other night. There's like a fairy or a ghost or something with, I saw that. Okay, so these little boys, they were playing hide and go seek. They were playing tag just before dark, an October night, just like this. They cut through a backyard. One of the boys, two of the boys actually, they were being chased by the third. It was a yard through which they'd never been, okay? There was a circular grave in the back of this yard. The two boys who were running from the one chasing them stopped. They looked down and they saw a placard, a tombstone, and it had a name, Nimbus, my faithful dog. They were kind of in awe to discover the grave of a dog in somebody's backyard. It was a very sizable grave. But the third child, when he caught up to the other two, he stopped and he looked and he saw something different entirely. Because you see, this third child was an empath. He could see and he could hear what others could not see and what others could not hear. He had a way of knowing things without knowing, and without knowing how he knew, okay? We're being surrounded. Now I'm hearing stuff back here. So anyway, one of the first two boys said, wow, somebody buried their dog here in their backyard. That's kind of creepy. But the third boy said, that's not a dog. There's a man buried in this grave. Someone's buried here, a person. And the other two, in unison, almost said, look, it says it's a dog, Nimbus, my dear dog, Nimbus. But the kid who could see without seeing and who could hear without there being sound said, no, there's a man down there. So these little boys began almost nightly for the rest of that summer, sneaking into that yard, that backyard. It was the yard, the woman who lived at this location, she was like 90, very, very old, very aged. But they would hide in her bushes and watch the grave because the one boy had convinced the other two that there was a body buried down there, and that if they watched long enough and if they were lucky enough to catch it at the right time, they might see a ghost. Well, the other two boys wanted to see a ghost, and they trusted their friend. They knew that there had been times when he'd made other kind of crazy remarks or statements that kind of turned out to be somewhat true. So they wanted to see if they could see the ghost of this guy that he swore was buried there. One of the kids, several days later, after they'd been kind of hanging out in this woman's backyard at night until they had to go home and go to bed, mentioned what was going on to one of their parents. And the parents said, oh, that's so-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. Yeah, about 30 years ago, she kind of had a hard time. Her husband was a real piece of crap. He drank all the time. He used to, he was physical with her in a way that no one should be physical with someone else. He used to abuse her. And one night he actually killed her dog. She had a Great Dane. It was a huge dog, and he was jealous of the dog. Killed the dog, and then he left. Just took off and left her. No one knew where he went. And this would have been like 1950s. And you could do that back then, and they'd never find you. There was no internet. There was no, all the stuff we have today, cell phones, which are traceable. So this kid went and told his other two buddies, and two of the three boys believed it, but the third said, nope. He said, there's a man buried in that grave. That is not just a grave of a dog. So, they took his word for it, and they'd go around and they'd hide in this woman's bushes, and they never saw any ghost. And she died somewhere around the time they were in middle school. And by then they'd stopped going around and doing this. They'd kind of outgrown the whole hide and go seek thing. They weren't hanging out with each other quite as much as they always had in the past, because for some reason they were starting to hang out with girls a little more. So time would pass, they'd all grow up, and a devastating flood came through this small town in Pennsylvania, Idaho, Indiana. Could have happened anywhere. And this woman's house, where these boys would hide out in the backyard around the alleged grave of a Great Dane, trying to see a ghost. It was very close to the river, and this flood just took out several houses, took out parts of several yards. It unearthed that gravesite. And when the cleanup crew came through, cleaning up the wreckage of everybody who had wreckage to be cleaned, they went past this house, empty and abandoned. The old woman passed on, her children passed on, and somehow it just became one of many abandoned houses that, pollute many small towns in the Rust Belt. But what they found when the cleanup crew got there, after this flood had washed away a portion of the land, because it was so close to the rivers, they found two skeletons. They found the skeleton of a very large dog, and they found the skeleton of a man. Now, as far as what happened, how to get there, who knows? But, I'm kind of thinking, I'm just kind of willing to bet if I were a bet man, which I'm not, because I've always been too good at math to gamble or play the lottery. I'd be willing to bet old boy tuned up on old girl a little bit, a few too many times, and maybe he did kill her dog, and maybe she finally had enough, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and she killed him back. Or maybe she had enough, and maybe could have gone another way. Maybe she took him out, then took the dog out to have an alibi. But there were two skeletons in that grave. One was a dog and one was a man. And that's your story for October Nights. I want to give a shout out to a longtime follower and supporter, James Lynch. He says I should end these shows this way. I should thank you for being here for another episode of O.N. Yeah, I saw it. I heard it. October Nights.